Starbucks' annual revenue is reportedly near $10 billion, and studies show that an individual contributes nearly 3,000 of that personally. Caffeine has become an everyday staple in modern society, and it's important to know what that is. I myself consume large amounts of caffeine and am not a stranger to the effects that it has on the body and the brain. I also have a lot of background information and personal experience with caffeine and the newly popularizing forms of it, as I am in high school and am around a lot of teenagers. Caffeine is a drug that stimulates both the brain and its nervous system, and as a current student in high school, I have a first-hand experience of the quickly popularizing new forms of caffeine and the effects they have on the younger generations. In this speech, I will address the new forms of caffeine in our generation, as well as the effects that caffeine has on productivity, and lastly, caffeine's effect on the human body. Firstly, there are many different types of caffeine. Caffeine has been quickly and dramatically popularizing over the last several decades. Around 87% of youth drink a caffeinated beverage at least once a day. This is over half of our population. As youth, we are told not to consume caffeinated beverages as it can stunt our growth, but according to the statistics, this is unfortunately not working. Companies, therefore, are trying to keep up with demand and make sure that their products stand out against other companies' products, and that adolescents, their main target audience, are the ones who want to purchase their products over others. Studies show that over 100 milligrams consumed for adolescents when it comes to caffeine can be extremely problematic. But have we ever considered how much of the beverages that we consume actually have caffeine in it? Soda is made with large amounts of caffeine in and of itself. Did you know that cola products were originally proposed as a medical substance? But eventually, studies have shown that soda can lead to obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and dental diabetes. One can of Coke has 34 milligrams of caffeine in it, and if you drink several cans of soda a day, you can quickly reach your limit. Almost 65% of youth have at least one soda a day. That is over 30% of your caffeine intake daily already. Not to mention that adolescents have normally several sodas a day. And a new fad that I've noticed in caffeinated beverages is flavored energy drinks. Over the past few years, in my experience, I've seen them rise in popularity very quickly, and the demand has risen as well. It is not well known, though, that Alani has 200 milligrams of caffeine in it. That is double the amount of caffeine that an adolescent is supposed to intake. And this beverage company specifically targets adolescents as their main audience. Last year, energy drinks made up 31% of beverage sales. This is an extremely high amount considering that not everybody likes energy drinks, and it's a small portion of the sales market. Drinking more than 6 energy drinks a day is a serious risk to health. Now, keep in mind that most people only have 1 or 2 energy drinks a day, but people who do have a serious addiction can rack that up to well more than 6. Celsius sales increased by 43% in a year recently. That is in a large amount, specifically since these beverages are catered toward adolescents, and as you can see, their marketing strategies employees are working. Furthermore, caffeine has lots of effects on performance. Caffeine is well known to help improve performance. Studies show that although consumption of over 100 milligrams of caffeine for adolescents is problematic, anywhere from 200 to 400 milligrams for adults can actually improve performance. Over or under that amount can actually decrease performance in adults. On average, adults statistically consume at least 251 milligrams of caffeine per day. Now, this is just equivalent to 1 cup of coffee. So, if you're a person who drinks well more than 1 cup of coffee a day, you're surpassing your caffeine limit drastically. Caffeine also improves athletic ability. Caffeine blocks adenosine receptors in the brain that promote relaxation. By blocking these receptors, you're essentially increasing alertness and enhancing active and athletic ability, decreasing your level of relaxation. Caffeine consumed in moderate doses can largely enhance endurance as well. It is shown that long-distance runners prefer to consume minimum amounts of caffeinated beverages, but still do in order to maintain their distance and speed. Caffeine also enhances academic ability. Something that most people don't know is that caffeine can actually improve memory up to 24 hours after consumption. But some study in contrasting that thought, though, some studies show that caffeine can actually falsely create memories, and instead of knowing one right answer, you can actually come up with several wrong answers. Studies also show that caffeine has some protective qualities from memory illnesses such as Alzheimer's and dementia. Caffeine also has a large effect on the human body. Drinking moderate amounts of caffeine can actually reduce a person's risk for atrial fibrillation, also known as heart attacks. Drinking too much caffeine can lead to premature ventricular contractions. Ventricular contractions are brief disruptions in the heart's natural rhythm. This is extremely dangerous to people and their heart's ability to function. Caffeine can be both good and bad for the heart depending on the quantity and frequency of consumption. Caffeine also has large effects on a person's ability and quality of sleep. Caffeine can increase the wakening experience throughout the night and decrease the time spent in deep sleep. This is due to the fact that caffeine counteracts the actions of adenosine in the brain, the molecule that induces grogginess and sleepiness. This is due to the previously mentioned fact that caffeine counteracts the actions of adenosine in the brain, a molecule that also induces grogginess and sleep. Without enough deep sleep, individuals can feel groggy and experience a lack of focus throughout the day, although caffeine does not reportedly affect the REM sleep. Researchers suggest avoiding caffeine at least 8 hours before sleep in order to decrease these effects. Lastly, something I personally can relate to is caffeine's effect on anxiety. Caffeine is shown to both mimic and enhance anxiety in people. Caffeine can increase heart rate in individuals, which can feel like anxiety and therefore even create anxiety. Both drinking caffeine and attempting to reduce consumption of said caffeine can increase heart rate. This is due to the fact that withdrawal symptoms increase your heart rate and increase blood pressure, which can also create anxiety. Lastly, all of these previous factors mentioned, whether it's the lack of sleep, increased anxiety, or the lack of rest, combined can affect a person's mood. Caffeine also counteracts the effects of some neurotransmitters such as serotonin and dopamine. The lack of these neurotransmitters on the brain can decrease feelings of happiness and joy and increase feelings of sadness and depression. All of these points address the new forms of caffeine in our generation, as well as the effects that caffeine has on productivity, and lastly, caffeine's effect on the human body. To conclude, caffeine is a very powerful drug that greatly influences our modern culture and both improves and worsens human condition due to the effects that caffeine has on productivity and the overall human body, as well as the vast amounts of different forms of caffeine. Thank you so much for your time.